Welcome back to the Marketing Rules podcast, and I am joined by Fran Halsall. Fran, it's a pleasure to have you on board. I'm going to describe you as possibly my perfect guest. Okay.
Oh yes, I'm taking that. Thank you.
This is not saying anything against all previous guests, but we've had guests on who are kind of elite sports people like yourself, who have then kind of gone on to kind of, do a lot of kind of motivational speaking and that kind of career. But unlike a lot of those people, you've actually then kind of run your own businesses. You've actually done a little bit of marketing, and now you're in recruitment. So you kind of, there's no more boxes to tick at that point, basically.
Or I'm a jack of all trades and master of one, so nothing that I say is of any importance.
Well, I'm going to go with my description. I think that's probably
okay. Yeah,
we'll go with that one.
That one makes me feel a bit better too.
Yeah. But yeah, Fran, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on board. And if there's anybody out there who's listening who isn't kind of aware of kind of who you are and a little bit about your kind of background, is it kind of gives us just a quick kind of overview of that, and we'll dive into that a little bit more as we kind of carry on though.
So I'm Fran Halsall. I'm a 3-time Olympian, world, Commonwealth and European champion. And still to this day, my claim to fame is that I'm one of the fastest women ever to swim a length of a swimming pool. So I think only me and 5 other women have been under the 24-second barrier, which swimmers work a lot in numbers. So going under a 24-second barrier is pretty cool. So that's me, that's my background. Subsequent to being an elite athlete, as you mentioned, I set up my own business, which is a baptism of fire into the hospitality industry. So learned a lot about business from that. Then trying to decide what I want to do, because retiring at 26 didn't really seem like a viable option. So moved to London, worked a bit in advertising and marketing at Mediacom, and then moved back up north, trying to figure out how I fit my sporting mentality and what I learned from sport into business. And that brought me to Jam Recruitment. And now working with Jam, they've given me the opportunity to do that with their clients, to kind of build great teams and like educate people around what sport can bring and what the mindset of an elite sports person can add to any business and to anybody really. So it's making that kind of accessible and those links between the two.
I mean, it's a pretty kind of varied career. I'm sure in your mind it's very smooth, but from the outside looking in, it's a bit kind of like this. It's a bit kind of wavy.
Where'd you hang your hat after a 10-year career of sport? Where'd you hang your hat on what to do next? And that's athletes deal really badly with that as well. So I kind of gave myself some space to go, okay, because you're in a bubble, aren't you? Like everything that you do, like any job that you do, you're in a bubble of that industry. So I didn't really know anything about any other industry when I came out of sport. And one of my things is I love to learn, and I'm like really inquisitive and interested. I'm that annoying person that asks why every time I speak to her. So actually understanding a lot about different things has helped me learn a lot about myself, but hence the bouncing around a bit, I suppose.
Well, I understand it. I can see that. And from the other kind of elite sports people that we've spoken to, there's always that difficulty with transition into what do you do once you have kind of retired. And I suppose that there's a couple of different avenues. You kind of either stay within the sport and you coach or something around that, or you kind of take it to the corporate world and say, right, this is kind of the mentality of a sports person, and this is how I can kind of go down that route. And then there's the other route that that you've taken, which is, well, I'll go set up my own business over here, and I'll try some other bits and pieces, and I'll land on something kind of eventually, just to kind of try things out, which is actually quite refreshing, I think, to kind of go down that route, to take a few risks, I think.
Well, thank you. So for me, I wanted to, basically my mission is still, I suppose, to show that, yes, you can be good at something, but it is transferable. And a lot of athletes don't kind of have those kind of role models that go off into a different industry and build a career in that industry, but it is doable. And everybody now, like working in recruitment, like I understand a lot more about why people get recruited, who the right people are for the right jobs. And there's so many skills that you learn in a 10-year career, full stop, doing anything that's transferable to another industry at a higher level than you probably give yourself credit for. So there's so many athletes that come out of sport with all these kind of attributes that make a mega employee that they don't realize that they've got. And kind of been the journey that I've been going on, I suppose, is understanding where my skills are and why they're important, and really why it's worth employing someone like me to do a good job for.
You're making it sound like an interview. Do you mind if we kind of take a little if we roll back the years a little bit and kind of get into how you got into swimming in the first place, and that kind of part of your journey? So what was it that were you just a good swimmer naturally, and then were you one of these people who got very pushy parents and that kind of like, you have to do this,
Fortunately not the pushy parents. However, I was just a mega competitive kid. So at about 8 years old, I loved all sport. My family's sporty, like everybody in my family has played sport to some kind of decent level. Like my granddad played scratch golf, so I actually learned how to play golf before I actually learned to swim properly. My mum played for the county at tennis, so we've got quite a sporty background. But I loved winning and competing, and that's what I loved about sport. And I went to an athletics club first, actually. So I was in Southport, northwest of England, and Edge Hill University had an athletics track. So I went there to try out the athletics squad. And they basically told me at 8 years old, you can train for a couple of years, but they don't let you compete that early. So then that was of totally no interest to me whatsoever, because I couldn't race everyone and beat everyone and win whatever I was doing. So hence because joining a swimming club, they have inter-club competitions, so you can race everybody at your age. So that really got me inspired. I can get into this and I can race at it. However, what the piece of the puzzle that was missing is I wasn't a very good swimmer. So I turned up at swimming club thinking, this is great. I'm going to be able to race. I'm going to be able to compete. I'm going to be able to win trophies, get medals. But I actually found it so hard to master the technique of putting your face in the water and turning your head to the side to breathe. So swimming's quite a sport that a lot of swimmers, you retire from early, you start early. A lot of people talk about swimming being for a younger person's sport, really. So you have Olympic champions that are 17, 18, 19. So me starting at 8 and not actually being able to swim the strokes correctly was actually quite late to start. So I'm at 8 in the shallow pool and the kiddies pool trying to learn how to do this, while everyone else my age was swimming up and down, being able to do butterfly backwards and forwards, and I just couldn't get the hang of it. But I kind of was just a tenacious little thing that stuck at it, had to master it because I'd set my mind on mastering it. And then eventually when I did, it just clicked. And then everything for me just snowballed from that moment with my career, really. As soon as I'd grasped it and it clicked, I was fortunate enough then to kind of build and build and build and get some great successes.
And when you're kind of, do you have, what point within that your career do you then settle on the type of, the stroke, for instance, or the distance you're gonna then kind of swim?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because this is something that I talk about a lot now, is getting niche and making sure that you do one thing and do it really well. And it took me a long time to do that, which probably in a way hindered my career a little bit. But I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to be good at butterfly, backstroke and freestyle. So I had 3 strokes that I was really good at, that I think I won national championships in all 3 of the strokes. I think I've won European championships in all 3 of the strokes as well. So I was really good at 50 meters, 100 meters, any sprint event. I was really good at it. And then I went to London Olympic Games. So this was at 22. So I'd already been to Beijing. I'd led up to London. And at London, my one regret is taking a scattergun approach to it. So I entered the 100 fly, I entered the 50 freestyle, I was in 2 relays, I was in the 4x200 freestyle relay, which is like a marathon for me as a sprinter. So I had 6 different events that I was competing at and didn't get the success I wanted. So after that, I was like, I need to focus in on one thing in particular that I'm gonna set my goal as that is the event that I'm targeting, and that's the one I want to be successful in. And that was the 50-meter freestyle for me. So then once I'd focused in on getting that niche that I just wanted to swim one length of the swimming pool faster than anyone else, how do I do it? That was a real game changer. And then that led to 2014, me being the fastest swimmer in the world, and actually now being one of the fastest swimmers ever. That only happened when I got niche on that one event. So that's one of my regrets. I didn't do it earlier, but when I did, it made such a difference to my career.
And you know, you mentioned that that kind of winning is in your kind of genetics, basically. How do you deal with it when you don't win? Is that the kind of impetus to do better, or is it a reason to kind of beat yourself up for not doing better?
Good question, very good question, because that was like a massive learning as well during my career, was that I beat myself up a lot when I didn't succeed and didn't hit my goals that I wanted to hit. And London Olympic Games was probably a main one for me for that. Like, if you can remember back to 2012, you remember how like intense those 2 weeks were. Everybody was sat watching it on telly. Everybody was in the spirit. I couldn't believe how friendly Londoners were when you were walking around London and excited about the games. It was actually so incredible. Such an amazing event that was put on. Everybody was behind it. And there was quite a lot of pressure on the British team to do well. And the swimming team, all in all, we tanked. We didn't do what we were expected to do. And my performances weren't up to where they could have been for that event. And I wrapped my ego around the fact, and wrapped whole Fran as a swimmer was a thing. It wasn't here's Fran and on the other side there's Fran the athlete. It was all just one thing. And because I was so entwined that I was a better person because I was a good swimmer, which is mad, I know. But because of that, it made it so hard to deal with not hitting the goals and not achieving what I could have achieved there. And it was like a mourning process, you know. I kind of came out of those games, and for like a couple of months, I'd wake up crying that I've missed my opportunity, that I wasn't a good swimmer, which is crazy. Came out of that year actually the second fastest time in the world. I just didn't have an Olympic medal, and because I didn't, I saw myself as a crap swimmer, which is ridiculous. So I had to kind of go back and unpack all that and realize that who is Fran and who is Fran the swimmer? Yes, Fran the swimmer can be competitive and want to win, but you have to harness that and use that in the pool. But that isn't you, and that's not who you are. You've got your values. I value honesty, working hard, and helping other people. They are three of my values. And I know that I've got in and did my best. So when I started to change how I looked at my results and just saw them as okay, that's the result, that's the best that you had that day, and analyze it in that way, I kind of changed my mentality of not getting as upset with like not being as successful or not winning the race. It was more, okay, it's a performance. That's Fran the swimmer. Fran the swimmer does this. Okay, why did that happen? But Fran the person is loved by a family, got great friends. She's honest. She's trustworthy. She tries her best every day. And that's what actually I truly value, rather than the ego wrapped around being the best in the water, I suppose.
I assume also at that point you've got a team around you, right? Am I?
Yeah.
And what goes through your head with if you have a bad result, or for instance, you mentioned that you probably spread yourself a bit too thin over those events. Do you completely blame yourself, or does it project onto the team? Is it a team problem at that point, or is it always a Fran problem?
It's definitely a team problem. Like, everybody thinks that swimmers, especially, but most individual athletes, that it's just them and it's only them on the path towards this goal. But it's really not. And like, you cannot do it on your own. Like, and so it's like a coalition of willing people. There's got to be a coalition of willing people towards a goal. I had no right to set a goal of being Olympic champion. Like, it was mad. I set it at 14 years old. I was 5'7". Everybody else in my event is over 6 foot. I weighed 59 kilograms. Everyone else is 72 of them. The pool that I trained in was an hour away from where I lived, and it was 33 1/3 yards. So it wasn't even in meters, the pool I trained in. There was cockroaches running down the lay ropes. I'm pretty sure it was built before Jesus was born. was that old. It got teared down like 2 years after I competed in Beijing. It was like there was no right for me to set that goal. And I needed a coalition of willing people who thought, yeah, we want to help Fran on that journey. We want to be successful with her. And that was everybody from my coach, my support scientist, my agent, even the lifeguards at the pool who had to get up early at 5 o'clock in the morning and make sure the pool was open on time so I could get in and kind of do my training to be on track towards this goal. And it was, yeah, the team is everything and everybody had to deal with it. And everyone then has to go back and analyze. So it's hard to share that blame because ultimately, well, not blame, share the performance, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's me that has to stand up and deliver the performance. And not many people realize that as an elite athlete, you're on funding, you're on lottery funding. So I get a certain amount of money a year, but that's only when I perform. If I don't perform that year on that one day in that one event, I have no funding the next year. So like I literally, the pressure to perform is life-changing really. Either I can feed myself, get to training and pay my mortgage the next year, or I can't. And that's all on you and on yourself. Like that's not for your support team around, but they are all bought in and have the clear direction of, right, okay, this is what we want to achieve. And then you share it with them. Yes, the lows is bad and you have to go back, you have to reassess and you have to like make changes, but the successes, everybody shares together. And there's nothing better than having someone like with you feeling great about what's just happened. That's I suppose that's why people love team sports so much, that there's so many people that get excited and enjoy the successes. So our whole team enjoyed the successes. After I won the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow, after I won gold there, like my coach is crying, the physio stood on his physio like deck going nuts. My sports scientists, you can see like, because they film your race, the cameras like everywhere. It's literally, it's everybody has this clear vision and focus and on that journey together. And I honestly don't believe I'd have achieved as much as I did if I hadn't had a coalition of those people that were all willing to make sacrifices, knew their role and knew what the clear goal was at the end.
So, so how many people would there been around you at that time?
At that time, so there was, so my coach was obviously the closest person to me. He's my day-to-day, every day, like a second dad to you. Then there's sports scientists that's on pool deck measuring times, like taking lactates, heart rates, all that kind of jazz. Then there's nutritionists, and I was so lucky I got to work with a guy called Ian Rollo, who actually he worked for Gatorade, so there's a high performance Gatorade lab at Loughborough University, and then one day I'm like sat with him and he opens up his computer and my file's next to Lionel Messi's file, and I was like, okay, that's a bit nuts. Yeah, so I got him, and then I've got my agent who sorted out anything in terms of sponsorship, all that kind of jazz that was going on in the background, doing interviews. Then you've got to report into British Swimming and British Swimming. So I'd have the performance director of British Swimming coming and having meetings with me month in, month out to make sure I was on track and what he thought I needed to do. Then like when I was younger, obviously parents are involved in it. And then everybody at the pool that's there day in, day out, that's kind of your teammates, they're involved in your goals as well, because they're on this journey with you too. So there's a good 8 to 10 people at least that are directly giving an impact of what you're trying to achieve. The physio, the masseuse, there's like a good number of people that all then have to be on board with the same thing and have to communicate well. Communication's everything between that. If somebody's not in line with what's going on, then I'm screwed. If I go into the gym and do a really hard gym session and then my coach gets me in the pool and pushes me doubly hard in the pool, I'm going to break. So that has to be a liaison between the physio, between my coach, between my gym coach, and everybody has to, like, communication is massive in sport, and the ability to kind of adapt and change really quickly and give feedback. And that's kind of a less like something that's completely different to what I've learned from some business, that it's not the same in that sense. And that's what sport really does really well, is the ability to give feedback, communicate and make change really quickly. Definitely.
Last question on kind of your sports career. What was the thing that made you decide that it was time to retire and move on? Was there a drop in form? Was there one moment that you just thought, this is not going to get any better? Was it something that kind of crept up on you, or was it, how did that kind of work? How did that kind of come about?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one actually, because when I retired, it was January 2017, so just after the Rio Olympics. I'd just come fourth at the Rio Games, and I was 6/100ths of a second off winning a gold medal at those games. Not even a silver or a bronze. It was 6/100ths between coming fourth and winning gold, which ironically it takes a second and a half to say 6/100ths of a second. And it's just, you can't even comprehend it. I've tried to stop it on my stopwatch on my phone. I can't even stop a stopwatch quick enough as that. So I kind of thought that, you know what, I've done my best here. I gave my best effort in this event. I trained the last 4 years, solely focused on that. I've won all kinds of other things. I've had a great successful career. The only reason for me now to go for another 4 years is the missing out on an Olympic medal. And I kind of got to the point where I was like, I'm actually really happy with my career and what I've done and what I've achieved. I'm really proud of myself. And I'm really eager to understand what else is out there. What else can I do? What else can I offer? Surely sport isn't just everything. There's more to life than just sport. So it was really just a case of, I was happy to let it go. And once you're happy to let it go, I don't think you give the same, because it's brutal. It's 4 years of literally every day of your life is consumed by that one thing. So, and I don't think I was in it enough then after making that decision that I was happy with what I'd done and what I'd achieved to be able to go again for Tokyo, which hopefully will take place this year.
Well, fingers crossed. So that's, you've moved on from elite sport. The next step is you're going to kind of find your niche somewhere else, right? So what do? Do you kind of look at your peers and go, oh, I've seen what those guys have done, or I see, what other people have done, my friends have done, I've seen what they've done? What made you decide to kind of go in? Well, you set up a coffee shop, right? That was kind of, because that's completely, left field, right? It's like, where do you get from, I'm no longer going to be, I've done my time as a swimmer, let's go open a coffee shop?
Yeah, it doesn't sound tangible, but bear with me because it is. So I finished swimming. I decided I was finishing swimming, and as you said, what do I do next? I'm living in South Manchester. My husband's still playing professional sport. He plays rugby league. He's just retired. And I needed to find a purpose. I needed to have a purpose in my life. Ultimately, I know that if I don't have anything that I get up for every day, I'm gonna go insane. And I think that's the same for everybody. Like, people found it hard during furlough and that kind of stuff because it's kind of lost the purpose to your day. There's not really anything you can do. So I knew I needed to have a purpose. So the first thing I decided to do was I was going to run a marathon. So I ran the New York Marathon that year because I need a goal, I need a focus, I need something to work towards. And then as an athlete, you spend a lot of your time in between training sessions in coffee shops. You can't go out to bars that often. Like, that's not your scene. You spend a lot of your days traveling around the world, sitting in different coffee shops. So I loved coffee, like coffee before a session, coffee for socializing. Coffee was like a passion of mine. And then as athletes, we have quite like attentive personalities where you have to know everything about something. So I went down to London, I did my barista qualifications. So I understood everything about coffee, like how many grams you need to put in to get out the best like brew, what the flavor profile should be, why it should be coming out at a certain weight, etc., etc. Did all that training. And luckily I had a little bit of cash saved from competing and winning races. And a friend of mine had also finished competing at the same time. She was a cyclist, and cyclists are also known for liking coffee. So like, let's do this. Let's open a coffee shop. Didn't know anything about business. Didn't know what you even needed to do to start a business. But we both love coffee. We're passionate about it. We're passionate about setting up a coffee and brunch restaurant. Let's give it a go. And I think it gave me that sense of direction that I really needed, because if I hadn't have had that, I could, like a lot of athletes struggle when they come out because they haven't got anything to go at like that. They struggle with depression. It's like a downward spiral. So I was really fortunate that I just went, I'm going to do this, and just gave it a go because I enjoyed it. I loved going out and eating and drinking. And so it was like a passion of mine. And yeah, the coffee shop, like we opened it in, I think it was August 2017, we opened it. And fortunate that it was in an amazing location. It was in one of the most affluent areas of South Manchester. So we looked onto a great business decision of where to put it. And it did really well. And my business partner, Jess, she was moving away. So we sold it. We got some money out of it. Learned so many lessons about people and what people are like, what customers are like. And it's funny when you've just come back from an Olympic Games and you're serving someone a latte and they're giving you a bit of jip about it not being right and that your service style's awful. That was an interesting situation.
So you were kind of hands-on with that though?
Oh,
you
yeah.
weren't just kind of like a silent partner. You didn't just kind of stick the money in, and because so you were actually serving coffees and etc. And
I wanted to learn everything about it, James. I wanted to know how to make the menu. I wanted to know how to do the coffee. Wanted to know how you did all the cashing up at the end of the day, what the KPIs should be for the business, what the VAT bill's going to look like, when does that even come out of your account. I wanted to know everything about it, the insides out of it. And I think I think it's really important to do that as well, because how can I go in and say, oh, I think you should do it this way if I don't know how to do it myself? And because it's very easy to, people respect you in a sporting sense, but why would somebody who's spent years cooking in the kitchen and designing menus and stuff ever listen to what I have to say if I don't get stuck in and give it a go and try and understand what they do on a deeper level than just paying them their monthly wage every month? It was definitely a case to me that it was helping me lead from the front by knowing and understanding what everybody else in that business did and could do and how it was done and what the challenges were there.
And then, so from moving on from coffee, you went into advertising and marketing.
Yeah, that's not as straightforward as it. So I can tell you the thought process behind it though.
Okay. Yeah, go for it. Go on.
So we sold the coffee shop, and that was when it probably hit me more, the retiring. What did I want to do? Where did I want to go? And opening my own business, it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And there was so much more, because when you're a professional athlete, yes, it's you that's doing the performing, but as I said, you've got a team around you, you've got people that you can lean on and go to for different things, and they all feed into what you're doing, so you can ask. Whereas when it's your business and you're leading it, you're the answers. So I was like, wow, okay, that was a massive baptism of fire into something else. So who do I want to be, basically? What interests me? What career path I go down? So I spent about 6 months looking into different industries. I actually applied for a job at BlackRock, which are a financial management company. Yeah. And they kind of said, yeah, we love you, Fran, but don't think this is the kind of industry that you want to be in. So I was like, okay. So I understood it, learned about it. I was like, yeah, no, you're probably right. That's not for me. But when I really enjoyed working with brands when I was a sportswoman. So I had the opportunity to work with Adidas, I worked with New Balance, Sky. So I've been on the side of it of being part of campaigns, like trying to understand where I fit into all that. So it really interested me, the background behind it, who decides that I should be here doing this in this way right now that's going to help somebody's business from a market perspective gain more sales, gain more following. How does that all come about? How does it work? And because I am who I am, I went to Google who are the best advertising agencies in the UK, and MediaCom came up. And what I really liked about the process of getting a job at MediaCom was that you didn't have to hand in a CV of this is what I've done. It was a video, who you are, why you wanted to work there, and it was a completely different process to just hand in your CV, what are your skills that are relevant for this job. So their mission, their like the tagline is people first. And I actually do believe that when they were like getting people into the business, it is about the person. So I really enjoyed that. And I enjoyed the fact that I was going to join an organisation that's one of the best at what they do and are massively credible in the industry. So it was a really great opportunity for me to learn about what big business looks like, what they do, how everybody slots into the machine that it is that's creating these ad campaigns, spending millions and millions of pounds worth of money, like week in, week out. I had like a little like thing come across my desk because you had to put in all the numbers, the IPOs, yeah, purchase orders. And I was like, bloody hell, have I got this right? And you had to like make sure you're doing the right numbers in it because there's that many. It's like insane the amount of money that's going through like that industry. And it was massive. It was so eye-opening. It was really interesting, the piece around the data and how people think and why people buy certain things and why people do certain things at certain times of day, and how you can attract what they see, how can you attract them to your brand. So that really interests me. But working in a big business, when you've come from my background, I found it quite difficult to make my mark and to be at a position where I felt like I was adding value, because as I said earlier, athletes have got a lot of skills that are transferable, and I didn't feel like I was utilising them enough, and that it was more of a do your time and then you can move up. And I was like, I already know how to do it. Let me move up and do more. So I kind of sold myself a little bit short, I think, on where I went into doing something. So I literally just went in as an exec on their like scheme that you can bounce around all the different departments. You can go work on the out of home sales, you can go and work in the planning department, you can work on the SEO, you could do all different bits and then find which one you wanted to then drive forward and career, which I thought sounded fascinating, because yeah, like I can try out everything, I can learn about everything and then decide. But ultimately I didn't feel like it was going to give me enough of a challenge, like quick enough, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So you decided that recruitment was the place to get that challenge. somewhere that was going to test you mentally and physically. You moved to recruitment.
Oh dear. Oh, I tell you what, it's literally, it's fascinating. Recruitment is fascinating, because everybody that I've met that works in recruitment, actually, they're all about self-development and moving themselves forward and being better and understanding how to be better. And they're so open to that. It's amazing. And I've really enjoyed that side of it, actually, that everybody that works at Jam is always pushing to how they can do better and be better. And that fits massively with my mentality when I was an athlete. Like, okay, I've done this. How do I do it better? How do I get better at what I'm supposed to be doing? What do I need to do to be successful at this? And I think there is a certain mindset that you need to be good at recruitment, because it's hard. It's not industry, is it? And there's people don't see it sometimes in a great light, do they? People think, oh, recruiters, what do we need them?
I think you've lucked out. I know I know a little bit about Jam, and I know they're a good business, and it's good to hear that they've kind of got that kind of internal culture. It's not the same for all recruitment agencies, I can tell you that. That they're all kind of have that kind of all pushing in the same direction. But generally, it has a bit of a stigma attached to recruitment, a bit like secondhand car salesman, and which is unfair, because the industry isn't anywhere near as bad as it kind of used to be. And there are good businesses and bad businesses, but generally it is tough. You know, it is long hours basically, and it's kind of figuring the best way to do what you can for your candidates and your clients and match them together basically. So at Jam in a minute, what's your kind of role? Because you're not a recruiter though, right? You're not actually kind of doing the recruitment part, but you're more brand ambassador type role.
Yeah, so I came on board, and as you said, they've kind of got really out the box thinking of how to do things and how to challenge things and to make a difference. And I basically had a chat with the CEO, John, and I was like, look, this is my skills, this is who I am. And he came back at me and said, Fran, you've spent 10 years building up them skills. If I wanted you to be a good recruiter, it's going to take another 5 or 6 years for you to be anywhere near as good at that as you already are at something. So let's play to your skills. Like, it's all about the person, and it's all about, they want to invest in great people and push them on the path of direction that they want to go in with their careers. So it's how do I then fit in what I've done to help Jam with their clients, to gain more traction, to give back to like the community. And they do a lot in aerospace and defence. So how does Fran the athlete help aerospace and defence companies build better teams, keep better people engaged, motivate their staff that they've already got to give more, to be more mentally sound, to be more resilient? That's what I can offer. So it's kind of, I suppose, an added benefit of using Jam as a recruitment company is that you get me to come in and talk to you about all things elite athletes, tell stories about what happened to me, and basically I suppose it's business development from a different slant.
And how does that look like? What does that look like? Would you go into a business and it's kind of like a presentation, or do you work closely with certain members of the team or small teams, and it's kind of almost like coaching? How does a project look like that you might kind of get involved with?
It's actually really flexible. So first, it's highlighting what, as you would when you're recruiting, highlighting what the pain points are, what's difficult, what is everybody struggling with at the moment. So HR, always the best people to talk to on this. There is the ground. They know where people are struggling, what's actually needed, where people need help. So I've been working quite closely with HR directors from the companies that we support, and what is it that's going on at the moment. So it's getting a holistic view of the business, of the industry, of what's going on, and then it's how they want to progress with it. So for example, yesterday I did a 70-person team talk for guys down south that basically just finished the project, and they had to step up and go again. So it's talking to their whole team around what it was like when you qualify for an Olympics. So yes, that's fantastic, but then you have to go again. You have to deliver the performance at the games, and it's making those parallels and comparisons that then they can take away, make them feel better, and leave them something to think about moving forward with what they do. So it could be anything from a Q&A, it can be small group things talking about goal setting and how we went about goal setting and what that looked like, or big kind of keynote motivational speeches to get everybody on board with having to deliver what they're going to need to over the next, some of these projects are 5 years long. So over the next 5 years, it seems like a long time away. So to get them ready and on the right path towards that. So it's really bespoke and individual. It's go talk to Fran, explain what's going on. She can come back to you with exactly what she can do. How does this fit? Is this what you were looking for? And then go from there, really, and hopefully inspire a lot of people, give them some insights, change how they look at things, their perspective on things, and generally show that, yes, everybody thinks that there's a secret sauce to being an amazing elite athlete, but ultimately I'm just a human being. And as I mentioned earlier, there was no right for me to set the goal to be an Olympic champion, but because I'd set it there, I was quite successful at what I did. But it's the mindset behind it and the mindset piece. And if anybody can learn from that and inspire them that they can be as good as they want to be in something, there isn't any physical attributes why I was good at swimming. So I'm not an alien. It's not a thing that's like, okay, we don't understand that. And it can be understood, and it can make a difference to everybody in a little way. Yeah. And that's what I want to deliver, I suppose.
It's an amazing message, right? It is, and it's kind of fascinating. The kind of the listening to kind of elite athletes and how there is something in the mind. It's all mental. There's a mental thing that elite athletes, I don't think it's always necessarily physical. I think it's all. I think it's 80% in your head. That's always kind of feel when I'm talking to elite athletes, and in kind of, it's the mindset you want to get over to other people in these sessions. I would imagine it's not about, as you said, not about you have no right. Physically, you were a lot different to how the other swimmers, but it's mentally you were probably much more kind of adaptable.
Definitely. But so I've got a question for you. Why do you think people get into recruitment then? Because obviously you've asked me how and what I did. Why Why do you think the majority of people get into recruitment?
That's a good question. I think some people kind of fall into it, right?
Mhm.
I think the view is that you can kind of, if you've got a little bit of sales experience, you can probably step into recruitment. The reason why you would probably move into recruitment from other sales is you have the ability to actually make quite a lot of money quite quickly, and make. I mean, depending on the type of recruitment you're doing for the kind of industry, if it's very senior or executive kind of recruitment, I mean, you can make, you know, 500,000 a year more, you know, I mean, even more than that, million, maybe even 1 million a year, as being a really good recruiter. And a lot of the time it is, you know, if you're a good salesman, you've probably got, you're kind of, you've got this kind of quite gregarious, outgoing personality. You're very kind of personable. You're good in communication generally. And you're quite probably empathetic as well, because you can. The good ones would be able to, you understand your client, you understand what they're after, and you understand your candidates and what they're after, and you can kind of match those together. So I think it's the right kind of person. But I think the reason why people get into it initially probably is because they've done some other kinds of sales, and I think it's kind of a stepping stone from there. From that point onwards, though, then as soon as you kind of start, you can level up quite quickly. To use a gaming term, you can become a kind of senior recruiter, kind of a manager, to a director to owning their own business. And then what's actually happened over the last kind of the last year or so is because a lot of recruiters have been either made redundant or furloughed, probably gone off and gone and set up their own businesses. There's a lot you see, and that's the other thing. It's actually quite easy then to become your own boss, because you can actually, setting up a recruitment agency is pretty simple. You know what I mean? You've got those, the skill set is you're the skill set, and as long as you've kind of got the candidates and the clients to match up, which can obviously is a difficult bit, but then that's what allows you. So I think there's some quick wins, and then there's some long-term goals if you're kind of that way inclined as well. I think that's probably why people get into it.
Do you think young people get into it thinking there's glamour around making a lot of money, but actually it takes a bit of time to get the right clients to be able to make the cash? Because I see kind of loads of trainee recruiters come in and out of the industry, and it's very much they think that it's going to happen tomorrow, but you've kind of got to eat your greens in a way. And I don't know whether it's a mentality of young people as a whole today, or just the few that I've witnessed recently, that it's more, I'm not doing it as quickly as I wanted to do it, and I'm not having a success as quickly, and not used to dealing with somebody picking up the phone to me and then them saying no back to them. And that's like a really interesting thing that I've been mulling over for a while. Is it that they're thinking, yes, I'm going to be able to go in and make quick, easy money, but actually you've got to build up your client base, you've got to speak to people, you've got to deal with the rejection to get there, and they're just not willing to do that?
I think there's a couple of things there. So I think there's a generational thing with certain, and again, not wanting to stigmatize any kind of generation, but there's definitely that there is definitely a generational feeling in there, especially I think around the way that younger generations communicate, you know, and mobile phones, and actually having phone calls and taking phone calls and using the phone for what it was originally intended is very low down on how certainly kind of younger generations communicate. So I think there is something that maybe the industry and as general and the people who we're servicing need to understand, that this younger generation doesn't communicate in a slightly different way to what we do, or have done. So I think there's something around that we need to understand better and understand, because that I think could potentially put kind of people off. I think there is a bit of mis-selling around that you can make a lot of money really fast. Some people do. There's no two ways about it. Some people do come in and just make a lot of money. But the people who make a lot of money are the ones who are probably then don't have the time to spend it, right? Because you're working every hour God sends to make that money, because you're putting in the time. You're the one that starts at 6 o'clock in the morning and then is working still at 11 o'clock at night, day in, day out, and is making phone calls to clients on Sundays and things like that, because you want to catch them at the right time to close a deal. So there's a couple of sides to it, and I think all are true, but all come at a cost.
Do you think that can be taught? So the tenacity, the going the extra mile, or do you think it is an innate thing in people?
I think it comes in time. I think experience really does help with that. I think some people obviously do come into the industry who are quite outgoing and gregarious and kind of pick it up and just kind of go with the flow, and who just don't mind talking to people. Other people, I think it does take a little time to kind of get under the skin of being a recruiter, and takes a few years to kind of do your time basically. So yeah, I think there's a mixture of the two.
It's really good. I've like changed this interview back.
I know you flipped it around. We'll have to change the name of the podcast basically after this one. So I've got two last questions for you before I let you go. One, do you have the Olympic rings tattoo that all Olympians seem to have? And do you still swim?
So answer the question right. I've got an Olympic rings ring, so
Okay.
a ring that's got the rings, but I've got the British Lion. So after 3 Olympics, I've got Pride. I think his name is now the British Lion. So he's on my foot. No rings though, just Pride.
You always see them on people's on the arms or somewhere. They're always you know.
It doesn't look good when you like finish swimming and you haven't got as big biceps anymore to show it. So I went with the foot. I went with the British Lion on the foot.
Okay,
So
cool.
if you know, you know. If you don't, you don't. It's not too out there.
Yeah.
And what was the second part? Sorry, I got too.
Do you still swim? Do you still swim?
Do I still swim? No, is the honest answer to that. I want now, and so when I first finished, it was very much don't want to get back in, not interested. But now I'm actually keen to get back in. So I want to do some open water swimming. I want to maybe do a triathlon at some point.
Okay.
So I want to get some open water swimming, and I'm quite lucky that down the road for me there's a couple of quite nice places to go. But currently I would probably get out of breath doing 100 meters in a swimming pool, which isn't fun.
Somehow I don't believe you. I genuinely don't believe that you're going to get out of breath. But Fran, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today. It's been fascinating, it's been insightful, and it's been very funny.
Thanks, James.
Good luck for the future, and it's been a pleasure having you on board today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Cheers. And then we go on to the next bit. Thank you very much. That was perfect. That was brilliant. That was really good. That was really good. Have you got your 3 top tips?
I do.
Good. All right.
I
Okay.
have.
So I will reintroduce you, and then we'll just kind of crack on straight into them. Welcome back, everybody. So I'm here with Fran again, and Fran's going to give us her top 3 tips for. Are we doing top 3 tips for recruiters, or is it kind of how we get? Is it just business in general? Or?
Business in general, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
But would also help with recruiting.
All right. Okay. So tip number 1.
Tip number 1 for me is be authentically you. So a lot of times in my career, when I tried to be the elite athlete that everybody expected me to be, was when I didn't have the successes I wanted. When I was in my own flow of being me, being happy and doing what I needed to do to be the successful fan that I wanted to be, that was when I performed my best. So be authentically you. And then my second one is focus on what you can control. So a lot of things happen, and especially at the moment, that knock you off path, knock you sideways you didn't expect. And you can't control the situation, but you can control how you respond to it and what you do next. So always take a breath. Yeah, this has happened. What can I do now to get the best from the situation I'm in?
Yeah.
And my first one is.
I think that second one is brilliant, because a lot of the time you just tell people you can only manage what you can manage, right? Yeah. If it's outside of what you're able to kind of, if it's outside that kind of your sphere of management, let's say, I mean, why worry about it? There's nothing you can do. You can't influence it at that point.
No, and it's like I've been reading a book about the Stoics and like Stoicism and like Marcus Aurelius, like talking about these things, and it's so relevant still today. The oldies are the best, definitely. It's hard though, isn't it? When you're in a situation that you didn't expect to be in, it's very easy to start blaming, isn't it? But as soon as you start blaming, you're on a downward spiral. And you're in a downward spiral, you're taking yourself away from where you want to be then. And the quicker you can go, okay, I can't control this, the quicker you're back on your path, and the quicker you are then to be back on the direction that you want to be in. So it's literally just taking a breath. I can't control the situation. but I can control my response to it. And I can't control my dogs.
Talking about controlling what you can control.
See, I cannot control the situation, but I can control my next tip.
So yeah, moving to your next tip. So moving on from Marcus Aurelius and barking dogs, let's go to tip number 3.
So my third tip is the one thing that I think elite athletes do that makes them successful is consistent daily disciplines. And it's not pretty, and it's not like exciting, and it's not the things that you get a pat on the back for. That is what I'm talking about. It's consistently doing those daily things that maybe like nobody would say, oh, you haven't done that today, but they're making a difference. Keep doing them consistently, and they will add to where you want to be and like what you want to get done. Like for me, I'd get up early. I'd be at the pool 45 minutes before I trained because I needed to get myself ready to train. But nobody was saying, well done, Fran, you're here 45 minutes before. And no one had said, where are you if I wasn't there? But it was doing that daily and consistently doing those things that I believe makes successful people successful. They love the icing on the cake, the cherry on the tops, but they know that if they focus on doing the basics well daily, even when they're not motivated, it's not a choice. You just get up and you do it. That is where success comes from.
Brilliant. Perfect. Thank you very much, Fran.
Thanks, James. I apologise about the dogs.